Now, this week, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu delivered his first New Year address to the nation, a speech meant to, inspire hope, outline achievements, and also chart a path for the year ahead. But for many Nigerians, the president's words have been met with skepticism. Now, the APC has praised the president's leadership, highlighting achievements in infrastructure, economic refocus, and also security. However, opposition parties like the PDP and CUPP, alongside notable figures like Peter Obi, have accused the administration of being out of touch with the struggles of ordinary Nigerians. Critics argue that the speech glosses over the harsh realities of rising poverty, inflation, and insecurity that dominate daily life for millions of Nigerians.
So joining us today, we will be breaking down the speech, examine the claims, and discuss whether the government is truly delivering on its promises or just simply spinning rhetoric. And so to help us navigate this, we have three distinguished guests to unpack this. We'll be joined by Peter Ameh, the National Secretary for the Coalition of United Political Parties. He's going to join us during the course of the conversation. And also joining us is Dr. Kennedy Oriakhi. He's a former Labour Party chairmanship candidate for Igor Local Government Council election in Edo State. And also joining us will be Akin Bash. Bashiru, I beg your pardon, that's Akin Bashiru. He's a seasoned political analyst, and he's also going to be joining us on this discussion. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and a Happy New Year to you. If we can have both gentlemen join us there, we're going to see if we can fix our visuals there and audio.
Oh, it's okay. While we're fixing, oh, there we have. We have Mr. Akin.
Mr. Akin, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, let's just get started. Your key takeaway from the speech, when what was some things that stood out from you, or really just your overview assessment of the president's New Year address?
Yeah, thank you very much. What stood out for me was the consciousness and the recognition by Mr. President that there are critical challenges that must be confronted in the coming year. So for me, realizing that yes, there are issues, there are problems, and coming up with, anticipated solutions that are expected to address these challenges, for me, is an admission that things are not really going on well. And of course, it's also an admission and of course, an assurance that the government in place is also not relenting, not resting on its oars in order to confront those challenges. That stood out for me.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Peter Ameh, he is the National Secretary for CUPP, and he joins us now. Mr. Ameh, many thanks for joining us. A little bit different in your own assessment, your association's assessment of the president's speech, because in the statement, the CUPP addressed concerns that the president's speech is pushing Nigerians deeper into poverty. Why that statement?
The fact that the president made a speech and talked about friends, living from who drive Rolls Royce, moving down to drive Honda, shows that he knows that those who are driving Honda will probably be driving a motorcycle, and those who driving motorcycle probably will have nothing to ride at this moment. So the president's sense of lack of empathy in the whole address also was very scary, because the promises the president had made since he came into office, none of that have been kept, and those that he wanted to keep was done with an irrational and impulsive process, like the removal of fuel subsidy. And if you look at the removal of fuel subsidy, because we are so dependent on this product, it is one of our mono product that generates revenue for us, that keep our people going, and the lack of no power in the country, it created over 300% increase in the cost of transportation and services. So the president should have addressed that and look at, we promised to bring CNG, to be able to cushion the effect of this transportation cost. Where are the CNG buses? There's nothing. And people don't want to, look at it, and they want us to look at the rhetoric. The rhetoric is like saying, this one, people should tighten their belt. Is the president and his team tightening their belt? As I'm talking to you, in the current budget, there's 4 billion naira to build an helipad in Lagos and jetties. As I'm talking to you, there's 9.4 billion for transport, for tips and travels for the president and the vice president. As we speak here, there's over 5.something billion that has been budgeted for the renovation of the presidential villa to accommodate the DSS. There's another 4 billion to buy cars. So this repeated line items is a major reason why Nigerian wars is not going away, because we need to have a very pragmatic approach to resource management, to physical discipline and physical responsibility to the resources that we have generated. We talked about when the president came in the last 20 months, our debt was 87 trillion. In the last 20 months, it has ballooned to 130-something trillion. We are borrowing. Borrowing is not a problem. I'm an economist. When you borrow money, you invest the money in a productive means, so that you know what you are doing with the money. Can the president tell us what this money is being used for? It is the president that started Calabar Coastal Road, and until today, we do not know the budget provision from the National Assembly. A presidential jet was bought for 150 billion. So these resources, if the president has tightened his own bed, like he's asking Nigerians to continue to tighten their bed, and put these resources in ways that would have reduced poverty and create jobs for the teeming population, I am telling you, things will get better. Nigerians are suffering, and these statistics are staggering. These statistics are not mine. They are from government sources and also from international sources, like the one that says that over 129 million Nigerians are living in multidimensional poverty. That represents about 56% of our population. This is the concentration of God. This is where government is supposed to concentrate. And when government talk about, we have done this, we have done that, government should look at the overall holistic approach to development of government policies. Because if you talk that Nigerian Bureau of Statistics released information and data saying that 2.2 trillion has been paid to kidnappers, and that 2 million Nigerians have been kidnapped, that means we are saying that our farmlands are not safe, our roads and our communities are not safe. What are the approach that government has initiated and created a robust security architecture to arrest this situation, so that we can go back to farm? Because the major contributor to inflation in this country is food inflation that is already over 40%. So these are the issues that I want to see the president tackle. These are the interests of the people, because first of all, the people must be able to put food on their table.
Okay.
If the inability of the people to put food on their table will result in more hunger and in more pains for the general populace, who are the mass majority of our population.
Just a second, Mr. Ameh.
Few benefiting for these resources must be able to show cost.
Mr. Ameh,
Nigerians must tighten their bed while they live in luxury.
Now, Mr. Ameh, I thank you very much for actually going into the security or insecurity instance that we face here in Nigeria. Now, the president's speech actually talked about advancements or achievements when it comes to security and also infrastructure. I'd like Mr. Bashir to tell us what he thinks about this, whether the present administration has done well, especially when it comes to security. And then, Mr. Ameh, I'd like you to reply after.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are living in Nigeria anyway, and we have been here for a while. So, we can also ourselves look at the situation of things and ask, the level of insecurity today, can we compare it to the level of insecurity we had in the last 1 year? Of course not. I remember very recently, I think somewhere in the north, that people are now going back to their homes, that there's been a reduction, you cannot travel, Fine, it's not yet Uhuru, but no, we cannot deny the fact that the level of insecurity has really, gone down. And I'm sure the government itself, while accepting that it's gone down, has equally said that it is not yet Uhuru. I think the point is this: when we are making comments or making observation, we should recognize the fact that a few things are being done, but more can be done. I can see the reforms you have put up there. People are now talking about, as of today now, look at the petroleum industry. Whether we like it or not, we must commend ourselves as Nigerians that now Nigeria can export fuel. Now, Warri Refinery is working. Port Harcourt Refinery is working after almost 30 years of being in comatose. These are some of the positives that are being taken. And like I said, and like I've always said, of course, you cannot achieve all of those things in a first swoop, but there are clear indications that we have a government in place that understands the plight of the people. In Mr. President's speech, because that's what I'm supposed to talk about,
yes,
he acknowledged the fact that the cost of living is high, most especially in the area of food and essential drugs. That's an admission that we have a problem. And of course, in the speech, the president also came up with plans, massive food production, encouragement of local production of essential drugs as an approach, to solve some of these problems. And that's why I said, if a problem has been identified, it's all have solved. All we now require and wish is that all these promises, all these problem identification can be matched with appropriate and strategic implementation strategies that will enable us to have some respite, at least in the coming, in the new year that we are. And for me, when you look at a few other places, you will see that efforts are being made. I had someone saying that Mr. President needs to work on the roads, he needs to travel from one part of Nigeria to the other to see whether, to know the extent of the poor road network we have. The question is this: are there no infrastructure renewal going on in different parts of the country? We must acknowledge that. But the fact remains that even whichever government in place, you cannot do all of this at the same time, at the same period. But are there efforts being made here and there? If there are efforts, fine. Let us encourage government to do more. But one challenge I have, which I don't know why there has been this silence by both the media, both commentators, is the role of governors in the development of the country, is the role of chairmen in the development of the country. We concentrate mainly on the president. Why? We are running a government that have 3 tasks. What are happening at the local level? What are the governors doing with the resources they have? If governors can put in their efforts too and develop their various states, of course, Nigeria will be better off.
All right,
so I need an opportunity to call on the media to also beam their light at the various state levels. Check on the governors. What are they doing to also improve the lives of the people?
Mr.
They
Bashir,
have responsibilities.
Thank you very much for sticking to the premise of the question, Mr. Bashir. Mr. Ameh, what do you think? Security, infrastructure, where do you score the president after his speech?
I think one of the problem people have is that they look at how the security agencies that they have appointed act as state protection of state. Like those in power, they protect them, so they are loyal to them, so they are satisfied. They're not really worried. My friend talked about people looking at state. When the president was in the opposition, I didn't know how many times he was talking about state. He concentrated on the federal because he knew that the federal government determines a lot of things in this country. We have almost like a unitary system of federalism that you have to come to part, like a feeding bottle, feeder pillar process. So you look at the security, for instance. What would the state governor do about security? The state governor is just a mere onlooker when it comes to security issues. If anything he does there, they'll call him an interloper. So whatever operation that has to stabilize this country's security has to come from the top. It has to come from the president. The president must not look at it. For instance, last year, we had about 12 collapse, some of our national grade. Some was attributed to bandits and terrorists. What is the president doing to be able to stop such things from occurring? Because without power generation, without stable electricity, Nigeria cannot prosper. The president is not looking at people are being kidnapped in the southeast on a daily basis. Honorable Bazuka was kidnapped some days ago in Enugu, in Anambra. So these issues are there, but people are trying to overlook it. The president must look at his macroeconomic policies, look at how whatever he would do best to be able to also improve, to boost the morals of the Nigerian armed forces. Look at police people retiring with 1.7 million naira for 35 years of service. A commissioner of police retired today, his pension will be 75,000 naira a month. So you must look at this, because if you don't boost this morale of the security agencies, give them barracks, accommodate them, they have been building houses for the president and renovating the president and vice president accommodation since he got to office, both in Lagos and in Abuja. What have they done to be able to improve on the lives of the Nigerian security officers by creating, building new barracks, renovating their barracks, and providing necessary tools that will help them move from one location to the other? Nothing. So these are the challenges of our times. And if we must resolve these issues, we must have a proactive action, not a reactive system that is currently in place. Nobody can travel today easily. People are praying that there should be train systems so that they will leave their car and move around. So because you move on the road, you are moving with either you are shouting hallelujah or you are shouting to your Almighty God so that you can get to your destination. If you have no such security as what the president has, the president will be going to Enugu soon. I dare him to travel by the road to see, because he's going to pass my village in Kogi State, to see how the road looks like. But he will not. It's going to take a chopper. Because from here to Enugu State, where it's going to, how many hours? This is how presidents get to study the country, get to understand the needs of the people from community to community. You cannot sit as a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria without knowing Nigeria, without knowing what uniqueness every community and what of the problems every community suffer. You cannot say that, oh, the state governor has his own budget, he does this. The state governor has limitation. As we talk today, yes, if the Buhari was able to sign the Electricity Tariff Act into law 2023, that is now helping for state to be able to generate their own power. But this infrastructure will take a long time. So the president must have to look at how he can solve this electricity problem, because electricity and power also contribute to lack of to the insecurity situation we have in this country.
Right.
So people don't know the nexus between these two. Points is very necessary that the president can solve this problem as quickly as possible.
Mr. Ameh, thank you for your submission. Right. Earlier on, during Mr. Bashiru's submission, he was saying that someone advised that the president takes the roads, and then to assess how the conditions of the roads are, and then you went on to point fingers at the governors. It's not, and that person, I need to put a name to that person. That person is none other than the presidential candidate for 2023 election cycle for Labour Party, and none other than Mr. Peter Obi. And he's not the only one who's voiced critics, who's been critiquing this speech. The PDP has also done that, saying that I'm looking for the right word now. The PDP voiced concerns about the speech, and they called the speech a mismatch with reality, and that's it. They called it a mismatch with reality. Peter Obi put out a number of recommendations for the president. He asked that he visits the universities to see how the TEP funds are being utilized when it comes to resources for the tertiary institutions. He asked that he goes for his next medical examinations, that he uses our medical facilities. He also asked that he visits our military personnel so that he could boost morale and security, right? Are these solid advice from Peter Obi? And does this not speak to the conditions and the realities of Nigerians and what they need? Mr. Akin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I have refrained from joining issues with Mr. Ameh, okay? But let me say this. I'm the chairman of my estate, and we have put in place a lot of security measures for our purpose. I don't need Mr. President to do that for me. So for anybody to come here and tell us that the governors have they have their limitations, what limitations? But I can understand, opposition rhetorics. It is allowed in democracy, and I don't have any problem about that. Okay? Now, when you talk about suggestions, the question I want to ask you is this. Mr. President will visit all the hospitals in the country. Mr. President would travel on all the roads in Nigeria before he knows there are issues. Is that what we are saying? Is that what we are saying? Fine. There are issues. But like I said, are roads not being constructed? Even at the local government level? Are roads not being constructed? Even at the state level? Are roads not being constructed? Even at the national level? Is that what we are saying? Are we saying this government at all the 3 tiers are not doing anything at all? Or are we expecting that all the roads in the country can be constructed by the chairman, by the governor, who is in place at this point in time? Of course, no. Of course, no. Development would always be continuous. And that is my own position as far as this is concerned. But of course, we must equally appreciate the fact, if we talk about light, You won't say there's darkness all over the place. There are places where they have light regularly. And you will also see that lately, there are more efforts being made by the government to decentralize even the distribution of light.
Right.
I can tell you clearly that Lagos State already now has electricity distribution company.
Mr. Bash,
another state. So states are now being encouraged. And what is the essence of this? Rather than keep a big elephant there at the national level, can we decentralize this?
Mr. Akin,
and now put the management of electricity in the hands of different states. It means that it's going to be more manageable.
Right. Let's go back to your take on the roads. I would like for us to dwell on that a bit, because if you look at our road networks, right, there's the federal roads, the federal highways, and the states, right, and they're the state roads are the roads that the state, or rather, the federal high roads are the roads that the states cannot touch or even try to manage, right? Yeah. And it is by far the most used roads, so that's the most means of transportation for the average Nigerian, given the skyrocketed price of both fuel and, by extension, transportation. This festivities that we just left, a number of Nigerians had to break tradition, which meant that many of them had to travel by road to go back home, but unfortunately could not do it because of the price of it, and secondly, because of the safety of it. Are you now saying that the president should not heed that advice to go by road, to at least assess those roads, even if there is some level of construction going on? And by construction, I mean the the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Is that even priority at this time, when the majority of the federal high roads are not pliable or safe for food transportation, human transportation, or tourism?
Anyway, if you are as a manager, as a planner, you have what they call short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, all right? And long-term goals should not in any way disturb medium-term goals, neither should it disturb, short-term goals. So talking about Calabar Highway, for me, while some people are condemning it, a lot of people are equally applauding it, which means we cannot have a consensus of opinion on even what the government does, all right? I can tell you this, you're talking about roads. I don't say that, the roads are not bad, but I'm equally saying that, is the government taking responsibility? You're talking about doing festivities. In the last 1 year or so, traveling from Shagamu interchange, you understand, along that road have been quite terrible. But I can tell you, last 2 weeks, I was traveling on that road, and there's been a lot of improvement on that road. The same thing happened in some other places. So my point is this, I personally don't see why Mr. President will have to travel from Calabar to... Are we saying that the government cannot pretend not to know where these problems are? But how quickly can these problems be put in check? And that's what we should be saying. And personally, I don't really see what Mr. President needs to do by traveling from Lagos to Ibadan, traveling all this. Why does he need to do that? Are there no ministers? Why will he have to require Mr. President to go to hospitals?
And you don't think that that's grassroots? In a democracy, you don't think that that's grassroots? Because I find it far removed, right? If you find it okay to travel by...
What's democracy?
No,
democracy?
Hang on. If you can travel by road for campaigning, yeah. If you can go through all these places to campaign for presidency and to campaign for votes, what is now the difference, now that you are in power, to go back to those people that you canvass for votes to speak to them? Why do you need your ministers, your special advisors, and governors to do that?
There's a difference. You're talking about different scenarios. I go around to campaign, and while going around to campaign, I take cognizance of the situation on the roads. Do I now need to go back again to not say, please, I've come to check again, are your roads good or bad? What are you talking here? Sorry. The government in place, the local government, the state government, they cannot claim not to know where the roads are bad. But the question is, how quickly can they make efforts to elevate these roads?
Mr. Bashir,
are there efforts going on at the different layers of local government, state government, federal government, addressing these challenges.
All right, Mr. Bashiru, your submission is
That's
noted.
the question for me.
Now, thank you very much.
There are problems.
All right.
There are no interventions going on. Interventions are going on.
Okay.
Which
now,
none of us here can deny.
All right, sir.
But
now let's move on to another issue,
what you
sir.
want at the same time is the challenge here. So the idea is not for us to just come whole scale.
Yeah.
Oh, he needs to go back to the road to go and no, that's not what we need now. What we need now are suggestions on how to move the country forward.
All right.
For me,
now, Mr. Bashiru, I want us to also discuss on
it.
another issue which is very contentious.
Thank you.
And that is that the president, inside of his speech, made mention of the increase of minimum wage. The average Nigerian will now earn 70,000 naira and upwards as the states reviewed their own wages individually. This seems to be a good thing from inside of his speech. But when you put that against the fact that the cost of living has gone up times 3%, I'm wondering what you think about that, Mr. Bashiru. But I'd like Mr. Ameh to first respond to that, the issue of minimum wage.
I think the president and those his supporters and analysts that are supporting him are disconnected from the hard reality. They only want to stand by the cheap rhetorics and the kind of cheap talks being pushed around. When you look at people for transportation from here to Lagos, to get a very good transport company, it's 58,000 naira. So how do people move around? It is the impulsive, irrational decision to remove the fuel subsidy without properly planning for it has crippled the Nigerian middle class and the lower class. There's nothing the president can say that about 70,000 naira minimum wage that has, reflected positively on the life of the worker. The worker today in most ministries are doing rotation. They don't go to work 5 times a week anymore. It's about 3 times a week as we speak to you. So you can't tell me that the out-of-pocket expenses that have greatly increased is so you can justify it by 70,000 naira minimum wage increase. And let me tell you something, go and verify this, that this 70,000 naira minimum wage is only for the first level of employment. It did not, they were not spreading it across all strata of the civil service, that like what you do before, you need to increase it by increase so that other senior staff can benefit from it. So what we are saying is that you talk about this. I must commend Mr. Peter Obi for being the opposition and even other opposition that offered advice, genuine advice to the president on how to govern. Because most times the opposition does, there's no opposition doesn't advise. Opposition says something. The man, my brother in the studio, said that he has provided security for his estate. That is to show the nature of state collapse of the agricultural system. Let me tell you, we travel abroad, we travel everywhere, we know how this system functions. The minimum wage cannot take any worker home. It's not taking our people home. It's not helping our people to get progress. Because at the end of it, the inflationary measures that are not being put in place, the overspending of the government literally put our money on fire by spending on things that are not necessary, that will not help our system to grow, that will not drive productivity, that will not increase the level of infrastructure. Look, today, ships come to Nigeria. They come with goods, they don't see goods to take back. People can't import cars because of tariff and cost and the increase in dollar. The increase in dollar alone has already eaten everything that is in one's pocket. So we cannot talk about how the government has increased 70,000 minimum wage without looking at the effect of what its policies have cost. Most people talk that the president does not know Nigeria well. That's why he's making a lot of mistakes. Because you talked about the president travel. Show me where the president traveled by road to campaign. Show me. They were entering private jet and chopper to each state. We're asking now. The opposition is asking. All the leaders of the opposition leaders, like Peter Obi, is also asking. Travel by road. Connect with the people you are governing. Relate with them. Try to have engagement. So that with this engagement, you will be well informed. With this information, you will translate it into policy to be able to now generate proper policies that will help to reduce poverty in our society. You came up, you are giving development commission. Everything about equality has to do with about equity too. If development commission has been giving money, the place that would have helped you to reduce the cost of inflation on food is Benue and Kogi. That is the farm basket of this country. You did not give one single naira to the North Central Development Commission. This selective justice, this selective administrative tactics that is isolating some and giving opportunity to others is not the kind of democracy we want to practice. The president must, if he's really interested to develop this country, must now start to listen to the voice of the opposition that are genuinely advising him. Because this country, what we are advising is that if this country collapse, it's not going to collapse only on people in government alone. It's going to collapse on all of us. That's why we have refused to join the group of spineless bootlickers who would decide to praise the president at all costs. This country belongs to all of us, whether you are in government or you are out of government. The function of opposition in a multi-party democratic system is to advise, is to point out, is to criticize genuinely on how this government or this country can work. And for us to say this fact is that there's no security in this country. Farmers are not going to farm. People can't go to farm. People can't transport their goods and services from one location to the other. There's what they call push cost effect. Has the president done anything? There's a report that says that when you are transporting your goods from Sokoto to Lagos, the money that security agencies collect alone for each of the checkpoints increase also to increase the cost of food inflation in this country, which is called push-through cost. The president should be an effective commander-in-chief by dishing out instructions that will help this country to grow. It must bring macroeconomic policies that will improve on the lives of our people, and not this handout of people killing on the road on the street of Bodilon, on people killing across. Look, let me tell you one thing. See, over 70 people died from food stamp. No,
Mr.
They're doing it in America.
Mr. Ameh.
They're doing it in these things are done everywhere.
Mr. Ameh, just a second.
The one that happened in Nigeria, the president even flew to Lagos.
Mr. Ameh, let's keep it on the minimum wage. I would like us to keep it on the issue of minimum wage. And if you remember, I had asked both gentlemen, you and Mr. Bashiru, the same question. Mr. Bashiru, over to you now regarding the issue of minimum wage. Are we expecting that the presidency is going to cave in to Labour's further demand of an increase to minimum wage, even after the president in his speech, praised his achievement of the first administration to raise minimum wage to 70,000 naira?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me first thank you by bringing the gentleman back to our point of discussion. It's quite unfortunate that we lack the discipline to talk on given subject matter. And I must thank you for that. Minimum wage was the issue. I mean, I don't do distractions necessarily. Thank God, Mr. President raised the issue of minimum wage in his speech, which is a recognition of the fact that the current minimum wage is not in any position to sustain those who are earning it. You must give it to Mr. President for realizing that. We would equally recall the various parameters and considerations that led to the 70,000 naira that was agreed by the Labour. A lot of negotiation went into that. And shortly after that came these increases, in the economy. And I equally remember very well that when the decisions about minimum wage were being taken, there was this clause there that recommended, frequent review of minimum wages. So if Mr. President, in his agreement with Labour, as at the time they were agreeing on 70,000 naira minimum wage, also had it in mind that it's going to be reviewed on a regular basis. And Mr. President has come in his speech less than 1 year talking about review of minimum wage. It shows clearly that he's conscious of the challenges and the fact that 70,000 naira will not be adequate. I don't know the point of argument here. And I must say this. If with 70,000 minimum wage, Mr. President is now said they are going to review it, what is the point of argument here? Is it that he said it continues? What I think should be the point of argument, and which is for the Labour, is to sit with the government and agree the extent to which this new minimum wage will be reviewed in line with reality. So for me, Mr. President is aware, he's fulfilling his promise, which he made to Labour, that minimum wage will be reviewed from time to time. And this he hinted in his speech. What should be the next thing is for the Labour and all the various stakeholders that will be involved in agreeing a new minimum wage to come together, to be sensitive and look at the parameters available and agree new minimum wage. So the government of the day is not averse to new minimum wage. And that is why Mr. President in his speech talked about that. I think that's my take on it.
And finally, gentlemen, before I let you go because we're already out of time, right? We're going into 2025. For each of you, but I'll start with you, Mr. Ameh. What is the critical point, the critical sector that you think that the president should focus for the first quarter of 2025? Very quickly, because of press for time, and then Mr. Akin, you have the floor.
To talk about discipline. When we discussed, I first talked about the minimum wage. I discussed how inflationary measures are hitting the minimum wage, and I have to expand on how security and others affect this. Is a combination of forces. So you can't be talking about discipline when you are at a point. The fact remains is that the president must try to make sure that the power sector start to work and generate enough power, and then remove the discriminatory approach to band A, band B system. If you have more people you can generate more power, and you have more people who can pay for this power, the discourse will generate more money, and government will be happy. So the government must concentrate, because without power, no nation can move forward. And the government must live on realistic benchmarks. Talking about pumping 2.06 million barrels of crude oil a day, which I believe is unrealistic at this point, because if you look at what they generated and putting benchmark of 19.7 trillion coming from oil revenue, while what they generated last year was not up to that, it's like we are putting more pressure on the process of trying to govern. And the one thing that the Argentina president, who was elected the same time with the president, have done, the first of the thing that the president should have done was to open match his words with action. When they talk about cost-costing governance approach, with following the report, by not bloating the governance system, and then reducing cost of governance by making sure the line items in the budget are retrofitted to the problems that the Nigerian people are suffering from, and then have a budget approach that will not continue to repeat by purchase of cars, purchase of your kitchen utensils, renovation of the presidential villa, an approach that will not be realistic in nature, an approach that will drive this system. And if the president had thought out his plan very well and followed a process that was you don't put the cart before the horse, by making sure that these measures that would have not affect the minimum wage that he has initiated, by putting out these measures, making sure the CNG buses are on the street before the fuel subsidy was removed, making sure that this other housing system was provided for civil servants, so that the cost of whatever they are spending from their salary is reduced. So the president must also look at the roads. From Enugu to Oka, for instance, it's about 65 kilometers. Well, the president must be able to know what can be done to fix that road, what can be done to fix Lokoja-Abuja highway. These are things that will reduce the problem that our people are suffering, and it will also help in the movement of goods and services, and this will reduce these expenses and the increase of cost of food alone, and other movement of equipment and human resources. So we can't go away from saying the truth to the president. The president should concentrate, and the president is the chief supervisor of all the ministers, saying the ministers are there. If the president cannot supervise the ministers will run amok, and they will continue to make mistakes and make policies that will impact negatively on the life of our people. So the president must, as he's the chief security officer of our nation, and he's also the chief supervisor of all the ministries, he must know how to be able to give target to these ministers. The last time he removed ministers, one of the questions I asked was that what was the template that was used to judge the ministers that were removed, when the ministers of power is still there, when the other ministers who have not performed optimally to standard are still there. So we remove politics and political consideration from how we approach governance in this country, and if we do that, we'll get a better standard of living for our people.
Mr. Akin, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. My own advice to Mr. President and other tiers of government is for them to be consistent in the pursuit of their plans. I'm not part of the government, so I wouldn't know the policies, in terms of the scale of opportunities and in terms of the timelines. But I would suggest, for example, now in the petroleum industry, I'm sure there's nobody who will say we are not making progress. Security at that level has improved, and the indication to that is the increase in the number of barrels per day that we now get to supply our petroleum industries. My position is this: consistency and timely implementation of strategies that will that will bring relief to the masses within a short period of time is what I'm going to advise the government to please continue to do. The president and his officials, they have clear ideas as to the urgency required in this country to ensure that life is made much better. So my advice is that let them remain consistent, let them be available to rejig their policies, their strategies where they're not working, and where they're working, let them prioritize and give attention to areas that will lead to quick resolution and make life much better. I also want to encourage Mr. President to please continue not to relent on his ass in solving the problems. He promised that by the end of this year, inflation will have been brought down to 15%. And like Rwani said, he said that's aspirational and ambitious. It's not unrealizable, but it takes a whole lot of consistency to achieve that. So let there be less of talking and let there be more of action. And I also call on Nigerians that Mr. President and his officials cannot do it alone. We must rally ourselves around as a country of a people and see how we can help the government through suggestions, through critical analysis, and not through, distractions that we know will not help our collective, going forward for progress. That's my advice for Nigerians and Mr. President. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I must say thank you so much for taking out the time this morning to just have this very, very insightful discussion. Now, as always, opposition is important. It's important for checks and balances. The most important thing is that we are able to present our differing opinions and views in a very respectful manner, and both men have done justice. Once again, thank you, Peter Ameh. He is the National Secretary for the Coalition of United Political Parties, just giving us a bit of his insight on the President's New Year's address, and also to political analysts as well, Akin Bash. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All
Hello.
right, Bashiru, I beg your pardon.
Bashiru,
Bashiru, forgive me. And
Thank
Happy
very
New
much,
Year to you too.